to the Hacking Your Health podcast with Ben Kenning and Dave Kennedy. Two guys setting out to hack body, mind, business, and beyond. We are here to provide a single source, bullshit-free guide to understanding your body and how you can live better for longer.
Hacking Your Health listeners, just want to say a special thanks to everybody that is listening to this podcast. If you're enjoying what we're doing, please share us. We're all over at We Hack Health on Twitter, Discord, Instagram, you name it, pretty much everywhere. But your support, your sharing of your experiences, this community is what drives us, what drives this podcast, and what allows us to be able to do this every single week for you. So if you're enjoying what we're doing, please share us out there. The more people we have to impact, the more people we have to help. That's our mission. That's our goal. And that's the whole thing about Hacking Your Health. Thanks, everybody.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. I am Ben Canning.
And I'm Dave Kennedy.
And this is another rough and ready episode of Hacking Your Health podcast.
What's up? At least you're stationary today. That's the best part about it, right? You're finally back home. You're not traveling. We'll get some podcasts in. We're not going to have to hopefully sync up like 3 or 4 different splices of videos and try to get it working like we did last week.
I mean, don't speak so soon. So for anybody who is watching, apologies the fact that this looks like I'm recording it on a potato. And anybody who's been following anything, my camera is in my bag, which is fucking worse. I'm having to use my laptop, which, I mean, you can see the quality of the camera, but everything else should work. Hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood.
That's good. So you don't have any update whatsoever on your bag?
Not one, 0. And they've actually stopped replying to me on Twitter. So I'm just going to continue to torture them too.
Dude, I mean,
no update on the bag at all. 12 days in now.
Dude, so to our audience, do not fly British Airways at all. It is, that's something on a whole new level. You can't get a hold of anybody. The bag's basically lost and they won't talk about reimbursement or whatever that means. It's
essentially, I had one helpful person that I spoke to on, I guess, Thursday. And she wasn't customer services. She basically was in charge of like booking and rebooking flights. Asked to speak to the manager or whatever. And the girl essentially told me that the number that the staff had been given me is no longer in use because they were getting so many complaints. I was like, I mean, the complaints line, they just shut it off because they were getting too many complaints. I was like,
we're going to shut it off because too many. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
like that doesn't give me good faith in the company at all. It's like, oh yeah, too many of these, fuck that. They're just going to deal with it in email. And I'm like, well, whenever I get that back, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, good that you're back now. You had a good time with meeting Andrew Huberman. Did you actually get to see him in person? Like get to shake hands or anything like that? Or
no, I didn't. No, but I was relatively close. It was actually kind of, I don't know what I was expecting. Obviously I booked it and I was like, yeah, that'll be cool to go to. But then I got there and it was in a theater and there was loads of people. And I was like, this is kind of a strange thing to be going to. Like he's essentially just like a neuroscientist and everybody's going to watch him here and speak. I was like, I didn't know what I was getting in for. I didn't know what the talk was going to be about. I didn't know whether it was just going to be like a live episode of the podcast. I had absolutely no idea. But it was cool. It was very cool. He sort of talked about like the principles and methodologies, but he told it in like a story format. So it was a cool sort of experience. And then he did like a Q&A at the end. So it was cool overall, but no, I did not get to meet him.
Oh, that's a bummer. Well,
he did
next time.
Like my tweet. So I mean, that's almost like my claim to fame for you in the Rock.
You made it, dude. You made it.
But he was cool. Like it was cool. He just seems like a real cool guy. He just is like loves knowing things and loves science and loves stuff about the brain. Like it was really cool. Yeah, it was good.
Well, that leads me into the first thing, which was episode 97. We actually haven't. I mean, you listened to it, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was one of the most amazing podcasts. I talked a little about it last week when I did my solo podcast, which I was like, I got like 30 minutes in. I'm like, oh, that went pretty quickly. But I thought episode 97 was really good, kind of breaking down all of the fundamentals and the science behind it, which, was really cool to see. Like literally everything that you have taught me and everything that, is in that system and the program, what you're doing with hacks and what you've done with the BC family. It's like all validation of all of those different things and the science behind it is like literally every point that he hits was exactly how you do things, which was really cool to see, like, the validation. And obviously I knew it and it obviously works because I've had a lot of success with it. but getting it backed by, multiple doctors and going through the science of everything and hearing what works and what doesn't, that was really cool to go through. And they've gone through, what your total daily energy expenditure is and, how that applies. And at the end of the day, it is calories in versus calories out. There are nuances, but, if you eat less calories than you consume, you lose weight. If you, eat more calories than you consume or that you burn, then, you're going to gain weight. So it literally is as simple as that with, again, some minor nuances, but that the resistance training components, how we build muscle and the mTOR production, and just a really good podcast. If you didn't get to listen to it, I thought it was probably one of the better ones that he did.
I didn't link. I thought about this after, I think, because I was in such a shit show. By the way, just to touch on this for anybody who was listening who listened close to the wire, the podcast goes live at midnight Eastern time, which is like 5 a.m. my time usually. At 5 past midnight, I was still uploading it. That's the situation that I was in the fucking hotel trying to upload it. Like, I was falling asleep on my laptop trying to upload it, so I forgot to put it in the show notes. But I will link it in the show notes in this episode because it was genuinely it was a very cool episode. And yes,
it was with Dr. Lane Norton, who's a PhD and is also a personal trainer and does a bunch of other stuff too. I don't think he does the personal training stuff anymore, but he's got an app out and stuff like that. But he's probably one of the more well-known doctors in there on your body, how it works, how it operates, has a PhD in I think it's neuroscience as well. So he's awesome.
Yeah, he seems like a cool guy as well. But it was cool just to hear. One thing that I found is both of them speaking, they're both okay to be challenged on their thought processes as well. So
that was really cool.
They're not no, this is the way and that's it. And Andrew Huberman talks a couple of times about things that he thought in the past that, he then listened to other things or listened to other peers or whatever and how it had changed. So it just shows that, everything that people are learning is continued development. And I think, it just sort of reiterates the fact is that actually how little we know about the body, much more than we did, maybe 50 years ago, but still learning.
Yeah. And I misspoke. He's a PhD in nutrition science. And so, it's kind of cool because you'd hear Huberman talk about what he is very strong in, which is neurobiology. And then you'd hear, and then he'd ask very direct questions around, where Dr. Norton's, areas of expertise were in nutrition science. And, obviously he knew more about certain topics and vice versa. And that challenging aspect of things and talking through it and the data and everything else is really cool. And it's also funny to hear how, when you hear ketogenic windows and things like that, they broke down the studies of why, they had certain types of fasting windows and why that was directly, referenced in the science. And it had nothing to do with, or not ketogenic diets, but intermittent fasting and your feeding windows when you eat certain times. And people often reference the studies that were used and they'll say, no, the science says you have to do an 8-hour feeding window or this or that. And the 8-hour feeding window really came from the scientist that was doing the studies had to go home to his wife and kids to do things. So he only had 8 hours to do the study in that period of time. So it has nothing to do with causation of these are the results that are going to be, and you have to stick to that from a science perspective. So it's interesting how the fitness and nutrition industry will kind of take a hold of that, interpret it, and then basically it's the same thing for the steroids and testosterone. There was one study that came out that wasn't super accurate, didn't have a ton of data behind it, really small subset. And it said something testosterone has a similar properties of Dianabol or some of the really heavy steroids without all the major side effects, basically. And, there's other studies that have much more data backing to it that basically shows not really doesn't have that same type of effect from a natural plant production perspective versus, engineered steroids. And, but they'll reference that one study and then they pump supplements out that are hey, look at this one study that shows this. So there's so much bullshit out there that you have to cut through and really dive into the studies to see what actually is true and what's not. And it's funny because most of the supplements are using the same types of, lion's mane and, beta alanine and caffeine as far as stimulants are concerned from a pre-workout perspective. It's just, it's kind of an interesting market, the fitness and stuff industry, and for them to go through and kind of break all those down and say this is what this really means. Here's the things you should focus on. Here's how you live longer. It's through exercise and caloric restriction. Those are the things that you need to focus on, not all this other stuff that's out there.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to note. And somebody within the community, I think it was Jonathan, he asked, where do you go? Where's a credible source to go and read studies? Because I think that's a fair comment, because the internet is the internet. Do you know what I mean? And there can be studies that are almost tailored to a certain result, so then they can pump and sell supplements off the back of it. So I think that is an important one. And if you are going to go down the route of like getting into the studies and looking at it, you need to know where they're coming from. You need to know, is it a credible source, or has it been backed by some sort of company that's going to sell something? Is there more than one study that has that result, or is it just that one study that happens to be selling whatever the product is? So I think, it's cool. It was cool on that as well. And I think the biggest thing about it is like both these guys live and breathe it. Do you know what I mean? Like this is what they do on a daily basis. And one thing I sort of came away from the live event was, for him to fully commit to all those things that he says, like that is a big commitment in terms of time and lifestyle. Like, he talks about, every day getting up with the sun and having sunlight in the morning, grounding yourself to see him having evening sunlight. Like, it's a big commitment to get your lifestyle like that. So even like working towards that, I think ultimately is the goal. It's not to just, okay, tomorrow I'm going to start doing all these things that are going to help me focus better, live longer. I'll have my caffeine at a certain time because of this. Like, there's so many different things to sort of juggle and navigate. Like, you need to basically just start with one, and that comes again back down to the habits thing. And you feel like, okay, this is going to benefit me. I feel better now. Now I'm going to add this next one and then this next one. And like, I can't expect to wake up tomorrow and live the same lifestyle as Andrew Huberman. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And those changes that you have that are small changes have those long lasting impacts that we've talked about, I think, time and time again in this podcast. But the validation of total daily energy expenditure and what bodybuilders have been using for years, cutting and bulking and all of these different things. I mean, it's just putting yourself through a caloric deficit or caloric surplus, or, maintenance mode based on what your objectives are, the ability to build more lean body mass. What I also liked that he talked about too was, being in a slight deficit and still being able to put on muscle mass as a component of that, as long as you aren't shaving, you're getting the protein that you need. And he talked about how he didn't like essential amino acids. So he also has, I guess, a supplement brand as well. And he's like, we used to have an amino acids blend, but if you're getting enough adequate protein, you really don't need amino acids. And I think that's a good point. You really don't need essential amino acids or branched chain amino acids from a muscle perspective. But, for me, when I work out in the morning, I'm typically working out in a fasted state. I don't have a big meal beforehand. I may have like a banana maybe for some energy, but typically I'm waking up in the morning, I'm getting my pre-workout in, and then as I'm doing my intro workout, I'll do essential amino acids because I don't have any protein in the system at that point in time. And that's, the early parts of the morning is when your muscles are basically breaking down and all that other stuff. So you want, something to kind of support that process, especially mTOR during your lifting, as well as, a post-workout high protein meal as well. So, you kind of broke all that down, which is kind of neat, and went through all those. So, you learn little tidbits here and there. One of the ones that kind of shocked me that I hadn't heard from any previous podcast before, I've heard about the broccoli extracts, I've heard about fish oils and their impact on longevity and DNA repair and overall body health. But he talked about dietary fibers and how important prebiotic and dietary fibers are in your body, and especially for your micro gut biome. And what was cool about that is he had a statistic, and it was like, basically, if you're getting adequate number of dietary fibers, it has a reduction of mortality by 10%, including cancer and cardiovascular issues. I mean, like you wouldn't think dietary fibers would have any impact other than, hey, I have a regular, poop cycle or whatever. But, but he said, as long, he's like, pack on as much dietary fibers as you possibly can until, it gets uncomfortable, obviously. But the more dietary fiber, the better. So I started incorporating more dietary fiber in my protein shake post-workout just to get some more fiber in as I go through. So another important little tip that I heard that I hadn't heard before in the past.
Do you know what has a very substantial amount of dietary fiber? What's that? Your favorite?
Anabar?
no, avocados.
Oh, avocados. Yeah, that's not happening.
I'm up for the dietary fiber, but fuck avocados. That was cool too. And actually, they touched on a point as well, like a colleague of theirs or somebody that, they respect within the industry, doing a lot of research in terms of like the connection between the gut and the brain, and like even how early on they are in the research and that. Like, it's so cool to see, like, in 10, 20, 30 years, what they'll know about that connection and the importance of it. There are a couple of books that I've sort of skimmed over that have a lot of detail in terms of that. But I think even that, that's another level of taking things in terms of like longevity and your overall health. And I think
Yeah.
I was doing some check-in feedback whenever I got to the airport to travel on, I guess it was Thursday. And I genuinely opened up. I I couldn't get the video downloaded because obviously internet connection, but I definitely did out loud, holy shit, sitting in the lounge. And I'm like, shit, people looking at me like I'm looking at a picture of this guy in his pants, and I just went, holy shit, out loud. But I think, needless to say, everything on your end in terms of the cut is going well.
Yeah, so this cutting phase has been a really good testament. I've had ups and downs, so I dropped weight really quick at first, and then I started slowing down on that, which is to be expected, right? We had a pretty substantial reduction in calories, and then my body was like, okay, I'm going to shed, and then eventually kind of balanced itself out, and now we're lower. So I hit 230 today, which is good. And I've had, some hurdles with friends coming in and going out and having some cheesecake and some other stuff and Skyline Chili. I don't know who that is, but
we actually haven't touched on. We said the last time. Well, I guess in between us, we said the last time we will touch on the trip in general. But yes, continue on with the cut, and then we'll talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. But overall, it's been going extremely well. And what's really cool to see, and this is the balance that you have to think about as you go through this journey. Like, what's your goals, right? Is your goal to, shed the body fat and be, relatively comfortable and lean, or do you want to have some definition muscle or put on as much muscle mass and definition muscle and kind of keep it in that period of time? And so, I've gone through a few different iterations of this with Ben, and, when we first started, I, like anybody else, I was fearing that I couldn't control my weight, right? That was my biggest fear in all of this, is that, listen, I'm going up in weight. I can't control it. This is a problem. I want to lose my weight. And I also want to be big. He's like, well, let's try to lose the weight first and see what you got underneath there. And then we'll figure out from there. Right. So, we dropped weight, and, I dropped pretty substantially, pretty low. And at that point in time, we're like, okay, we're low, but we don't have a lot of muscle mass. So let's build that back up again. And let's take a look at that. And so it's been a combination of, building up muscle in a surplus and not letting myself get out of control with a huge amount of body fat. You're going to have some body fat. And so you're going to start to lose a little bit of your abs, and you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm going up in weight. I can't believe this. I'm getting fat again. And then, you start to say, okay, it's time for a cut. And you cut that up. And we've done that a few times. This one was particularly fun because of the fact that we had been bulking for quite a while, and we've gone through a pretty big muscle building phase. And I think at one point in time, I was up to like 3,900, almost 4,000 calories. I might've been at 4,000 calories. And, it was time to come down and starting to get, less abs and be big. And I'll tell you, actually, it's interesting because when you're lean, you feel amazing, you look amazing, but you also kind of miss that big feeling too, because you have so much energy and you're building so much muscle, and it's like you can go in the gym and do everything. I'll tell you, my leg day today, I murdered myself. Like I'm hurting so bad right now. You have no idea. It was such a tough workout that you programmed, and I had done so much in the gym, and I know that if I had 4,000 calories, I would have pushed myself even harder during that period of time. Right. And I was just dead. Like, I looked at the stairs and I'm like, screw those stairs. I'm not going to change. I'm just going to smell and stink when I go take my kid to Brazilian jiu-jitsu or whatever. And I'm just like, I'm not showering. I'm not doing anything. I'm like, I'm done for the day. Like, this is it. But the cool part is, lean right now, visible abs, the muscles, that you build, the definition in them starts to come through, and you start to see all the hard work that you've been able to do. And you get much more confident in that process and your goals and your ability to shave off weight when you need to and when you don't. I'm definitely not at the level of Mr. Canning here by any stretch when he's going through his shooting, his photo shoots. But I think that's possibly a goal of next year. So we'll see how that goes. But overall, cutting phase has been going really good, shrinking down that while also maintaining strength. And that's, I think, the coolest thing about this is that I was really concerned about losing muscle mass and losing the strength aspects, and those really haven't budged much. My deadlifts today were pretty much on par for everything else that I've done. I did 520 pounds for 5 reps, and then I did a 570 set, and then I went back down to 520 for 5 more reps, and then did 460 for 8, and then so it was solid as far as strength is concerned. To still be able to maintain that, still able to build muscle, and still be able to knock off the body fat, which has been really good. The biggest thing that sucks for me that I really don't like is that I still get a little bit of the excess skin, and which I'll always have, and that's fine. It's like a remembrance that I don't have the tight stomach area, like just a little bit of this extra hanging skin here that I wish I could just chop off. I may just chop it off in the middle of the night and see what happens, and then. But
don't do that. We'd not recommend. We'd not recommend. I think the thing is, and it's so funny because I have said this so many times, like whenever you're lean, you want to be bigger, and whenever you're bigger, you want to be leaner, and it is such a mind fuck the whole time.
It's so weird. Like I'm like, I want to be bigger again. Like I just
actually, I'll touch on like for me at the minute, I obviously overconsumed the calories for the past 2 weeks after the shoot because I was away and whatever else. But I feel really good in terms of like when I'm at the gym, like I just trained about an hour ago, and like you operate or you work, your work capacity is at a different level because you have more fuel. And I think the note on the strength side of things, because again, it's a people's fear that they don't, if their calories are coming down, they think they're going to get weaker. Essentially, if you keep your calories at a certain level and you maintain a certain protein level, you shouldn't get any weaker. You should still be able to progress in strength. Now, you maybe aren't going to progress in terms of, the rate that you were whenever you were eating 4,000 calories, but you should still be able to get those extra reps. So those extra 5 or 10 pounds in the bar, or whatever. It's different level whenever you have more calories, but the goal should still always be progress in terms of strength.
Yep.
I think, yes, okay, I did do the shoot, I guess 3 weeks ago now. I'm definitely not as lean now as I was then, but I do feel good in terms of overall strength. And like I said, we got a lot of solid lifts in. You almost broke me on the belt squat. But we got a lot of solid lifts in, and I trained obviously whenever I was in New York, and today was the first session I got back in the gym, and I feel good overall. I think my check-in to James this week might be a bit ropey, but I think he understands with the travel and sort of everything that's been going on with work and whatever else. But I think the shoot thing is, it needs to be a decision that the person makes themselves. Like, you don't want to be forced into it because you don't have the buy-in that you need to do it. So ultimately, if you make the decision, then yes, of course we can do it. And actually, it was funny, whenever I was in Nottingham with James, he was asking about any sort of plans that would do it. And he mentioned, he was like, sure, Dave, he could do it. He must be following somewhere along the way. He's like, he definitely could do it. Listen, if he makes that decision, we'll do it. But that's not a decision I'm going to make.
It'd be interesting. I think it'd be a whole different level of pushing yourself. And I think that's the cool part about all of this is like, it's comfort level, right? With yourself, with your mindset, with your discipline. And once you commit to something, do you have the ability to actually execute and do it, or are you going to fail? And, I think, for those that are hearing me talk that are just starting on their journeys here, this is a culmination of 2 years of mindset, discipline, second guessing Ben, second guessing myself, not having confidence in myself, right? To get to a point to where you're confident now that you have a framework that will work for you to lose weight or gain weight, and having the mindset in yourself and belief in yourself that if I let myself get bigger, there's a reason why I'm doing that. And there's a reason that I can take that off again. Right. And I think that's the biggest mind screw that you have is, the lack of confidence in yourself because you failed so many times before in the past. And, I don't feel that way at all. Like I sent you a text message this morning. I was like, hey dude, yesterday I went over my calories, and it wasn't because I was bored. It wasn't because, I was going out for an awesome meal and I was just going to overeat and eat cheesecake and Skyline chili. It was because my body was telling me, like, listen, dude, I need some more food right now. Like, I knew it was. And so what did I do? I ate chicken and rice. I had an extra protein shake. I ate really good whole foods, to kind of recover. And I had a couple of, one, really intense days at work. So that's going to burn extra from the brain calculating perspective. But two, my training has been extremely top notch as far as the new programming you've given me. So, it's new excitement in the gym. I'm hitting myself harder. I'm going harder than the routine. So, there was a little bit of time where I was like, hey, I just need a little bit more replenishment today. And I got on the scale today and I was a pound lighter. So, I have confidence in myself because I've built that trust with myself over several years to be able to do that. And there's no question I could revert back to old Dave or something like that if I really wanted to. But like, this is a part of me now that I know that I can go in one direction or the other and control my destiny in those specific areas. So if I was going to do like a shoot, I would say, listen, Dave, in my brain, I'm going to do this and I'm going to commit to it. And this is a whole different type of level that I'm going to do. Right. And that's going to be, something that, we look at maybe in a little bit, but it's kind of fun that I have the ability to do that now. Whereas, 2 years ago, I was all over the place. Right. I remember the first time I overate, it was at I mentioned this before on the podcast, but it was at a, poker thing. And I was like, I had like, I just had a bunch of chips and I had a cookie and, I drank beer and I went over like 800 calories. And you're like, dude, come on. Like you've been solid for like 6 months. And this is the first time. Like, okay, like you're fine. Like, I'm like, no, I'm going to not eat today. I'm going to go work 16 times more, that I do. I'm going to go.
I think you said I'm going to go do an hour on the climber or something. I was like, do not do that. Please don't do that. But I think it comes down to, for me, it's I'm going to be a self-proclaimed control freak here. For me, it's about control in every area of life. And I know that I can control myself whenever it comes to pushing calories up and taking calories down. And you're talking about like, how long you've been in this. Like whenever you posted up that you posted in the group the other day about it's 105 weeks in, like I had to use a calculator and work out how many weeks I was in, but like it's like over 450 weeks. I mean, it's coming on, I guess it'll be 9 years in February that I've been doing this. So I have been through all those trials and tribulations. I know what I'm capable of. I know if I can commit, if I get my mindset in the right place, I can commit to something and I can execute it. And actually, full disclosure, like after the shoot, I sort of was in a funny headspace because I was like, okay, right, that goal's done. There was talk of doing another shoot with Martin later on in December. Was thrown off by the fact that the plan with James was off the back of the shoot, do a couple of weeks of maintenance and then move into surplus for like 6-8 months, whatever it was. Spoke to Martin, he was like, will you do this for me? And it's like a bit all over the place. So I struggled for probably about, I guess, until a couple of days ago to sort of navigate what I was actually doing and be focused and have a direction with something, because I was expecting it to be one thing and then all of a sudden it was another. So it took me a while to sort of find my feet with it. But again, that's just part of the process and part of, another learning curve in terms of like, if you have to do these things back to back, it's a different sort of headspace. And I think, it is, if I had have told you, or if I had have said to you, in our first month of training, be like, okay, right, we've had a solid month, let's book a shoot. You'd have been like, what the fuck? Like, that would have been a selfish.
I'm like, what?
It would have been selfish of me, because that would have been me trying to get something out of you as, a result or whatever else. But essentially that's not what it's about for me. It's, it's the decisions that any of you guys want to make. So it would have been so far away from where we're at now. But now that you know that you have the control to push calories up, bring calories down, like you're in control of it, you know that the process works. When we take calories down and increase output, that you strip down body fat. Like we've seen it happen time again. So it's like, it's not that far away. Yes, okay, it will take a little bit extra commitment and a little bit harder work. But it's, again, like you said, pushing yourself to that next level to see if you can achieve, what it ultimately is the next level in terms of fat loss.
Well, it's funny because you say pushing yourself to the next level. And isn't that what we're doing this entire process? Whether it's resistance training, whether it's our mindset, whether it's our routines that we do, whether it's we're starting off with steps and then we're going to get to 2 or 3 times a week of resistance training. It's just pushing ourselves just a little bit more. And I'd shared something on Twitter recently. I did the deadlifts today, the trap bar deadlifts. And I was doing like, 520 and 570. And I'd done that one for 600. And I found a video from 2 years ago of me doing deadlifts at 135 pounds. And, it's funny because, you look back at that and I remember that day. I remember when I was doing that, and that was heavy to me, like 135 pounds was effing heavy. And it was one of those things where I was like, I'm proud of myself because the form was great and I was, progressing along. And I think I did three reps, for 135. And I was like, yeah, I'm badass, and all of a sudden now I'm popping 600 pounds on a deadlift, and, the progress that you make and the battles with yourself that you continue to escalate to. And, I think that's the exciting part, is just continuously pushing yourself in that direction. I think that's what is great with the community aspects with, the We Hack Health and, all the Discord folks and the Twitter folks and, all the people that listen to the podcast. I was on on a business call yesterday. It's today's Saturday. Yeah, yesterday I was on a business call, and it was a CEO of a company. I won't say the whole thing, but great guy, and he's a fitness guy. I can tell, athletic build, and he's an InfoSec. He's like, I'm actually on your Discord server, and I listen to your podcast all the time. It's awesome. I'm like, oh, thanks, man. Like, I appreciate it. That's great. That's awesome.
It's funny because even the day that we were at the Cavs game, and people coming up, they're like, oh yeah, introduce themselves. I listen to the podcast. It's like, that's so cool. Like, it's cool that people actually listen. They come up and introduce. It's actually cool to meet people in real estem. And I said this. Well,
it's cool too. So they're like, I feel like I know you already, and like everything about you guys. I'm like, that's so weird. You know way more than. But
I think the cool thing is, and I've said this time and time again, like, if we just did this and it was just me talking to you and we recorded it for an hour, like, that's good enough for me. Like, I only record it to have the conversation. It's so cool that people actually listen to it. And even, was it somebody, you shared something on Twitter the other day, somebody lost like 45, 47 pounds or something just from like taking it. Like, that is insane that people are making that change just from listening to what we're saying. Like, it's so cool to see that happen. Yeah, I've noticed as well, I don't know whether it's just like, because I've been a little bit more in tune, there seems to be like, it's growing quite rapidly recently. Like, more people, I'm seeing obviously the followers on Twitter, more people in Discord. Like, it's because I guess there's more people in it, there's more people sharing it, it's going to expand at a much, much quicker rate. So it's cool to sort of see that expansion and more people become involved.
And it's the community growing. It means we're doing the right things, and people are having success. And I think for us, the motivation that we get is seeing the success of people. Like, when I see somebody drops 47 pounds, I'm like, yes. Like, that's the greatest thing that you could possibly say to me, because your success is my success of what I get from a complimentary perspective, or just helping other people, get better. And obviously for you too. And it's just one of those things where, again, the more people you can help, the better. And that's like the cool part about this whole community and aspect of things. But so many stories, and you see so many people. And what's been great too, the Discord servers got a lot more women coming in as well, sharing their success stories and everything else. So it's awesome to see, the diversity aspects of this. It's not just a bunch of meatheads talking about lifting. It's good to hear different perspectives from different folks, which is definitely valuable and huge. And, different ways of learning and doing different things, right? I think that's the most important piece about this is, like, we're learning every day from your experiences as well. So things that we can do to help out is always sharing your perspective and experiences for that.
Yeah, and I've noticed it within the chat. So I had the initial call with everybody in the new program on Thursday, and I've noticed, like, the chat, I actually cannot keep up with it. I was actually thinking today, I was like, that you have levels in the Discord chat. I was like, what level am I going to be? Like, I'm going to get 300 extra calories and get an additional level. Like, what level I'm going to be replying to everybody in this? But it's so cool to see people will ask questions and 4 or 5 people will answer, and it's cool. And obviously I can go in and give my answer, but they'll give real world stuff, and they're talking about, there's a lot of conversation around like how to meal prep or how to manage your food with kids and in the house and stuff like that. So it's cool to sort of see everybody come together and help. And I mean, like, we're 2 days in or something. So how that's going to grow over the next 12 months is absolutely insane. So I'm excited for that as well.
That's awesome. And one of the things I thought was really cool too from the podcast of Huberman was the Carbon app, which I've been switching over to, which I talked a little bit about last week. And I'm still on Carbon app. We'll see how it goes. But I'm still logging in MyFitnessPal because I don't want to give up that like 900 week streak yet. So I'm doing both right now, and I'm just gonna get 3 or 4 apps that track all my food. Same thing. But the Carbon app is really neat because, and here's where I think there's issues with it, and I'll have to see, because they have what's called a check-in, so you can kind of check yourself in, very similar to how you do a check-in with you. And so if you don't have a personal trainer like Ben, what there's limitations of how they're doing in this app versus I think what you would see from a Ben perspective. Like, one, they've basically created kind of like an algorithm that takes your total daily energy expenditure. It estimates that based off your height, weight, age, etc., like any other macro TDE calculator is going to do. And then it breaks things down and it says, okay, well, your calories are 2,000. And based off 2,000, you need to get this much amount of protein, this much amount of carbs, and this much amount of fat. And that's a great, easy thing to start with. And what I really like about it is that each week you enter in your weight. So you can enter in your weight as many times as you want to throughout the week. Okay, so if you enter it in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, or just Monday and Friday, whatever, and it takes that and says, and it'll ask you what your goals are. So it'll say, do you want to lose, a pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 15 pounds in 1 week? Sure, you're going to die, but it's fine. but it'll once you actually get more towards like the 1.9 to 2 pound mark, it's going to say, hey, just so you know, you're probably going to lose a bunch of muscle mass as part of this as well. If you're losing that much amount of
you're like, nope, don't want to do that. No, doesn't sound good to me. No, fuck that.
No, I'm good. Anything that's going to impact muscle mass, I'm not touching. But was so I said I think I said like 1.5 pounds per week, and it'll automatically calculate my calories, my macros, everything else. And what was really cool is it was actually really spot on to what we're doing currently today. So, testament again to you and your baseline there, which is spot on perfect from a macro app that automatically uses AI and everything else to do this, right? But then when you do your check-ins and your weights, it'll automatically say, well, you didn't lose the 1.5 pounds, so let's drop calories down a little bit more. Because it's automatically learning what your total daily energy expenditure is, because that calculator is just an estimate. And, you need to continuously monitor that to see, hey, if you have shrunk, let's just say 50 pounds, your total daily energy expenditure from plus 50 pounds, you're carrying 50 pounds of body weight extra. Now you've lost it. Your total daily energy expenditure is going to be substantially lower. So, as you lose more calories, you have to adjust your calories appropriately to get to your desired results, whether that's, gaining muscle mass. Like whenever I'm working with Ben and a bulk, for example, let's just say I'm at 2,200 calories right now. If I'm starting to get into a surplus, Ben will increase my calories very slowly as my body starts to get used to that, to see where my calories are at, right? So I'm starting to add more and more calories, benchmark, and my body starts getting used to that. I stay at those calories for a little bit, then I move up again, as I start to put on more muscle mass because I need more calories to feed those muscles. And so it's this constant, pulling and understanding your body that is very difficult if you don't have a trainer to go through. So I like how they put that in there. The only issue that you have with that is twofold. One, there's other measurements that I think are very important to take into consideration, like measuring, your chest size, your shoulders, your biceps. Are you gaining muscle mass? Are you losing muscle mass? What do your measurements look like? What do the photos look like from a progress perspective, right? And apps aren't going to be able to tell you that, unfortunately. So it's a good baseline. So the first one, that's the first issue. The second issue you have is that, are you really accurately adding in everything, right? Was there a day where you were like, you're at 2,700 calories, but you really only put on 2,100 calories, right? So the app's going to be like, well, you had that one bad day, but it doesn't know it's a bad day unless you enter that in very accurately to that. And it's going to say, okay, well, you didn't lose a amount of weight, so we need to drop your calories down to 1,900. And maybe you're losing too much weight at that period of time, which is a byproduct of muscle mass. So there are definitely complexities with the automation on a lot of this. And if you're going to do it, you have to do it very accurately and account for, as many calories as you possibly can. And there was one instance that he talked about in the podcast that there's a huge variance in what calories are. I think they have to be like, there can be a variance of up to like 40% or something like that in the calories. So when you're eating calories, it doesn't mean that you're eating exactly that amount of calories. There can be huge variances in it. But what he said, though, was, if you're eating relatively the same types of food all the time, those variances are going to be the same. So maybe if you're over consuming and it's 2,500 calories and you're dropping 1.5 pounds, well, drop you down to 2,300 calories, and you're still eating the same types of food, but at a lower portion size, you'll eventually hit an understanding around where that weight is at. So it was cool to break that down, but so far I like the app itself. We'll see how the check-in component goes with it. I haven't done that yet, and how it kind of calculates that based off your calories. So I'm curious if you can configure it and say just, hey, I really didn't log much this week, so we're just gonna keep it going the same way, but we'll see how that goes. But I've been logging, so it's a good thing.
Well, I'll let you have a month before I decide to convert over. I'll let you sort of troubleshoot it and then see whether it's worthwhile going over. But
it's $9.99 a month, no trial, nothing. It's like, hey, you sign up, it's $9.99 a month. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
The thing about the calorie series is exactly right. Nothing, very little that we're doing from a tracking perspective is 100% accurate. And as soon as you sort of detach yourself from thinking that it can be, the better, because even there's chat going on at the minute within the Hacks chat about, should I log from Oura Ring or Apple Watch. And like, essentially, it doesn't really fucking matter as long as you're logging it from the same place each time. And yes, okay, one may have a different number than the other, but as long as every week you're logging it from either Apple Watch or either Oura Ring, that's absolutely fine. Like if you're logging up 1 week Oura Ring, 1 week Apple, then yes, okay, that's going to throw things off. But it's that consistently inconsistent, and it's the same with foods. Like yes, okay, maybe I'm logging the fact that I ate 2,500 calories, but potentially I ate 2,700 because of the food variance. But if I eat the same sort of foods from the same sources regularly, then if I drop that down, naturally it's going to come down with it. And there are a few things that I sort of, it's mentioned in the client handbook, but there's a few things that I do anyway in terms of like spray oil. I obviously don't track spray oil because maybe it's like 5 to 10 calories every time I use it, whatever. I generally don't track veg because I have the same amount of veg every time. So it's something that's going to be consistent. Whether I'm eating, whether I'm eating 2,500 calories or 1,500 calories, I'm still going to have the same amount of veg per meal. So something like that I don't track because it's a constant. Even I don't track my almond milk, which people maybe will lose their shit about because it's maybe 13 calories or whatever. But I put 100. It's like 110 milliliters of almond milk into my oats, not cooked, for anybody who's listening.
So weird. I need to go.
Well, actually, I want to call you out in this because whenever I was with you, you had to cook it, you put it in the microwave, and you fucking forgot about it. If you hadn't cooked it, you would have forgotten about it. So there you
I made myself some.
An hour later, you were like, "Oh shit, it's still."
I'm like, I didn't eat the oatmeal. I don't remember eating that because I have to go add it to the calories. I'm like, I don't remember eating. Oh, it's still in the microwave. There we go.
Yeah,
okay.
So there you go. Yeah, so that's one benefit of not cooking.
You don't forget about it in the
fucking microwave. But yeah, so either way, like I'll always have 110 milliliters of almond milk. So that's a constant every day. Like I have that every day. I just don't log it because it's always the same. And I'll
do the same thing for like veggies as well, like pickles, for example, which is like 10 calories or something like that. I'll eat like 3 pickles. I'm like, I'm gonna be okay there because I like pickles. So it's a nice, snack, low caloric snack that is kind of filling in nature. Cucumbers, things like that. Veggies are always a good thing to, pop in. So I'll do the same thing.
Yeah, but it's knowing those things as you go through. But yeah,
also you like 16 pounds of Starburst, and I don't log that either. So it's
like that cheesecake that we had. Definitely was 1,500 calories. I was like, I'll just eat half this, and then it was gone. I was like, oh, okay, I'm eating the whole thing then.
yeah. They show the calorie mark. So we went to the cheese. Not to derail, but we went to the Cheesecake Factory, and because Ben was like, we had gone to the haunted house, and
no, we went for dinner. Right, we went for dinner. And we had a really good meal. Yeah, we went for burger and sushi, which is in the one place, which is an awesome concept.
Yes.
Then we went
burger and sushi. So you get a burger and you get sushi with it, which is really good.
It was a really good burger and it was really good sushi. Like it wasn't like one was better than the other.
Yeah.
Then on the way to the haunted house, I was like, I could really go. Oh, there was cheesecake on the menu, and
there's cheesecake on the menu.
So that's why it was in my head, and I was like, oh, I could really go for something like cheesecake. But obviously, we didn't have time with the haunted house, which was absolutely hilarious. By the way, like I definitely was screaming like a little girl. And
you definitely screamed. I did too. I
definitely hide behind you quite
Dude,
a
the 2 chainsaw guys, like I pulled my back muscle because I jumped so high on that one. Like I was like, oh, my back. Because they dug the chainsaw into you, like as they're I was like, this it was intense.
But yeah, so on the way back, I was like, "I'll go for some cheesecake." But obviously,
you forgot to mention we got pulled over.
We got pulled over.
So Ben got to experience the law enforcement side of the house of the United States, and
it's just like the movies. The guy that comes up in the torch and all, like it's exactly like it is in the movies for anybody who's never experienced it.
I had cut off a police officer apparently trying to beat traffic, and then I also had expired tags. I just got my car back, which. It's a whole nother story that we, Ben and I were going to the gym. My car cuts out from an, anti-lock brake perspective. I have to do an emergency, dump on the side of the road. And it's been a kind of a nightmare. The truck is good now. We're all set. Everything's fine. Back to normal. But the police officer let me go. He's like, dude, I'm like, listen, man, I was taking my buddy from Ireland to a haunted house. He's like, oh, the slaughterhouse. I'm like, yeah, the slaughterhouse. He's like, oh, that place is awesome. Cool. All right. He's like, all right, well, have a good day. Make sure you get the tax taken care of. I'm like, thanks, dude. That was it. So really nice guy. So.
you used the he's from Ireland card that gives you a free pass for pretty much anything you do in America.
Yeah, that and I have military tags, which helps out a lot. So when they see that you're like former military, things like that, usually if they're former military, they'll be like, okay, like just calm down, dude. Stop doing this or whatever. But I still get tickets all the time. So, well, not all the time. Like I haven't got a ticket actually in like 5 years. Yeah,
okay. But yeah, so then it was obviously late and there was nowhere to have cheesecake, but you obviously clocked that. And then the next day after we had skyline chili, which in itself was probably about 3,000 calories, we went for another 1,500 calories worth of cheesecake, which was absolutely delicious. And I genuinely was like, I'll just eat a bit, pick up the man. I had no control over that at all. It was gone before I even could think about it. It was delicious.
Yep. And it was funny because like I ate all of that Skyline chili and then I ate the cheesecake and then the rest of the day I didn't eat anything. Like I was like,
no,
I'm good.
I got
like I don't need anything. So like,
no, I did not need anything. I was good. Yeah. But Skyline chili, I mean, if you want to, you got a lot of shit for that on Twitter.
So people get really upset. So Skyline chili is such a polarizing place for some reason. It's kind of like Nano and VI in our tech industry about editors. And so like Skyline is more of like a sweet chili. And so like that's like sacrilege to most people about putting like, sweetness into the chili itself. And so like some people really hate it and some people really like it. And some people are like, that's not really chili or whatever. But at the end of the day, you liked it. It was delicious. It was delicious. I love Skyline chili and I would eat there anytime. So I'm actually going to go after this podcast now.
You don't have the calories for that to do that directly.
I do not have the calories to do Skyline chili. There's no question about that. Yeah. When we start going into the bulking phase, I'll be eating Skyline every day again.
Yeah. It was good. No, it was good. We had a lot of good food. I mean, I definitely did overconsume the calories when I was over there, but it was all good quality food for sure.
Yeah. That was a fun part about it. Yeah, the trip was fun, though. I had a good time. Did not get to lift with you at Old School Iron, unfortunately. So you got to go with Kev and a few other folks, right?
The timing of that was perfect, though. Like the truck and
dude,
we were there. I was in for like, okay, we're getting towed, and this is what's going to happen today. Like I was totally fine about it. And then I saw Scott's truck pull up. And I was like, oh, Scott, this like out of the blue, he pulled out of nowhere.
So
I went with him.
What had happened was there's out of the battery, there's a couple of grounds that go into the frame of the car. And I had gotten into a car accident about 4 months ago, and I finally got my car back. And another funny story about that is Ben had to drive on the proper side of the road to take my old truck that was a rental, bring it back to my house while I drove my new truck there. So he got to experience driving in the USA.
There's quite an adventure.
Road, and what's that?
You did have quite an adventure now that we think about it. One thing that I will say, though, you were like, the whole time you were like, right, don't fuck up the roundabout. You have to go right in the roundabout. I was like, right, okay, I got it. And you got there. And like, you didn't even use your fucking indicators one time. I was like, how the fuck am I supposed to know where you're going? You're the guy in front of traffic.
You don't use indicators on a roundabout, though. You just go through. You don't use indicators.
Yeah, well, I mean, over here, you definitely should use indicators.
Oh, okay. You don't use turn signals on a roundabout. You just go through. It's through traffic. But you always go to the right, though. So.
Okay. Well, I did go to the right. I did.
You didn't die, which is a good thing.
I tell you what, driving a truck was no joke. I felt like I was driving a yacht up the road. It was fucking massive.
What I loved about it was you started sending pictures to Karina about like, dude, look how much space is in here. We should get a truck. Like, you're like, how's this gonna fit in Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, it would be completely impractical here, but yeah, I definitely would go for it.
Yeah, but so we were driving on the freeway. And I'm going like 75 miles an hour, and where they had reattached the neutral grounds to the car, they had painted in that area, and it had a bad ground, and so my whole car literally shut off as I'm going 75. And I was like, oh shit, but I didn't want to like get Ben all panicked. So I look at Ben, I'm like, hey man, the car's messed up right now. I have to pull off on the side of the road. I just did it nonchalantly, but like inside, I'm like, oh shit, I don't have any brakes. I don't have anything right now. This is gonna be interesting. We're gonna figure this out. But pulled over the side of the road, got into a ditch, no problem. Truck handled it, got towed. They fixed it like an hour later, and everything has been fine since. But the funny story about all that, it was so Scott Newspawn was coming through, and we were all going to lift at Old School Iron. And so I was like, well, dude, I'm sorry, you're not gonna be able to do the lift. Scott pulls over, he's like, hey, I can take you to the gym. I'm like, oh, this works out perfect. So I got my car towed. They went to the gym. I got my stuff back. The funny part about it was when I got the car, though, I got the truck. There's a bunch of sensors in there that needed to be reset. And so I either had, from an AC perspective, I either had burned the entire car down because it was so hot or really hot. And there was no AC whatsoever. So we're sweating driving on the way back because the sensors hadn't reset yet. There's like basically a sensor that has to reacclimate the temperature and all this other stuff. And it took about an hour and a half for it to actually do that. So we got the windows down, and it was an adventure for sure. But anyways, we made it. We alive. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got the lift. But you got your lift in as well, which is absolutely fine. But like
I did as soon as I got back.
In for like, you know what, we'll get it done at some other point. Like there's no rush, there's no hassle. I'll get experience the tow truck, whole other situation. But Scott saved the day, which is
Scott saved the day. Kudos to Scott
and Kev Cody at Old School Iron, and they're so nice in there. The girl was like, she must be one of the olders, or one of the owners, like an older lady. And she was like, oh, thanks so much for coming. I was like, my pleasure. Like, it's great here.
It's amazing. I'm taking my buddy Bobby. So yesterday, it was Veterans Day on Friday, and my buddy Bobby, who I went to war with in Iraq, he's actually in town for a bit, and we went to a place that is axe throwing and knife throwing, and like stars, like ninja star throwing, and like whatever, like sharp thing throwing. Well, it's funny because like they start you off with like ninja stars and an axe, and one of the dude comes over and is like, "Hey, you want to throw some bigger things and cooler things?" I'm like, "Yes, of course." And I had a few beers in, which is a great idea to be throwing. Really sharp
it
things.
Definitely helps with the aim.
Yeah. So we were throwing. I actually cut my finger, and I was bleeding everywhere, which is another story for itself. But it was a good time. But I mentioned Old School Iron to him, so I think we're going to go next weekend to hit that up and go hit that back, because I haven't been there in a while, and I'm missing the environment there. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I mean their swag store is legit. Like it's the best swag store of any gym that I've ever.
I was wearing the shirt the other day. I love it. It's super soft too. I like it. Like the quality of it is really good. Those are really important to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Last thing to hit on. I actually wanted to hit on one last minor thing. So we always talk about optimization and what you can do. And I've talked about, I do TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, because I had really low testosterone levels. But, one thing I'd implore our listeners to is go and get blood work done to see where you're at, not just from a testosterone perspective, but, do a deep dive in your blood work. There's a lot of discussion now in the medical field. The insurance companies are really kind of jacking things up as far as like what you can test for, what's covered, what's not. But, if you have the ability to kind of step outside of that and pay on your own, and it doesn't need to be outrageous, but, go get your own blood work done, or go to your PCP and say, listen, I want to do a full panel, testosterone, your thyroid, anything that you can do to give you more information. And there's a lot of companies that will do micronutrient testing as well. There's so many things that you can learn about that. And so there's peptides that can help, recover from injury from a body perspective. It's called BPC 157 and TB 500. There's a lot of cool things that you can do to kind of hack your body nowadays. And one of the things that I've been particularly interested in, and I'm not going to do it because it's not for me specifically, but for folks that are struggling on the obesity level, something that can also help you augment from a medical perspective is it's being kind of raved right now in the medical field as a weight loss drug. And I don't normally condone those because there isn't a lot that work out there. You see supplements that are like, hey, from a thermogenics perspective, you can lose weight. Well, this is actually a type 2 diabetes drug that they've approved for weight loss, and has a lot of other benefits as well. It's not just weight loss. It also looks to change alcohol behavior. So it reduces people's desire for alcohol, as well as has some major impact on weight loss. So people that are taking this typically can drop anywhere between 15 to 40% of their body weight just by using this. And so if you're morbidly obese and you're really struggling, again, our recommendation is always, macronutrients, get your calories under control, build those disciplines. But something that can help also too is, certain things that may help assist weight loss during this process as well. And it's called semaglutide. And you start off with a really low dosage and you gradually ramp up. But it seems to have a lot of promising effects, and it's, a lot of peer reviewed studies. Doctors are really looking at this from a long-term perspective. It's approved. It's got approved recently. It's one of those things where it definitely has a major impact in reducing body mass index in adolescents with obesity. So something to take a look at if you're interested. I know Elon Musk is a very polarizing topic right now, especially on Twitter, but Elon Musk has actually been using it to drop pounds and weight. It was kind of like a big LA, California fitness thing that's been going on with that. But, it is not one of those things that is like a fad drug. It's actually kind of interesting, the science that's behind it and what they're looking at it now from an obesity perspective. So could help you. Just one of the things that I've been, researching for folks that are struggling there. But semaglutide, something you might want to talk to your doctor about if you're really struggling on that front. So, whenever I see new research, like talking about it, like, sharing the results of it. And, again, just something to keep on your radar.
Yeah, I think even, just to go back to the blood work thing, I think it is important to get it done. Like I had a call yesterday with a client, and it wasn't necessarily that they were going to commit to going down the route of hormone replacement therapy. It was just to have it as a benchmarker, and then get it done in 6 months, and then get it done in another 6 months, to see if, using the data, to see if things are changing. Do you know what I mean? See if what you're doing is improving things or not improving things, and then ultimately what you can do to improve it further on. And I think by this stage we know, like, the power of what your blood can tell you is way beyond what any sort of fitness tracker or calculator can give you. And I think having that as data is essential, because you wouldn't necessarily know that there was any levels that were low unless you did do that. And even if they're not, it's good to say, okay, right, a year ago this is where I was at. A year later, I am better or I am worse. Maybe I need to start to supplement something or introducing something else along the way.
Yep. And again, those small changes can have huge resonating impacts on your health long term, just by understanding your blood work. I mean, there's pre-screenings for cancer, for everything from prostate cancer from a men perspective, to breast cancer, to cardiovascular issues that you may be having, that really certain enzymes and things that are used to repair. So there's so much you can learn about your body in areas that you may be able to improve on. And cholesterol levels are obviously important from a cardiovascular perspective. There's a lot of things that you can learn directly from that. And obviously, I'm a huge proponent of testosterone. Especially if you're on the lower side. I had a friend, and this really pisses me off, because he's talking to me and he's like, "Man, my energy level's down. I have just massive brain fog. I have like no motivation. I don't want to do anything." I'm like, "Dude, like, you should go get your testosterone levels checked." And he's like, "Oh, I already did." And he's like, the levels were 301 from a free testosterone perspective. And I'm like, the doctor's like, "Yeah, you're in the normal range. You're fine." And yes, technically 301 is in the normal range for like a 70-year-old, right? But he's like 43. He's the same age as me, practically. I'm like, dude, please just go talk to somebody else that's not your PCP, that is a doctor that specializes in hormone replacement therapy. Like, at least bump that up to like 600, 700, 800, and see how you feel. Just test it out to see how you feel, with that. I'm like, I guarantee it'd be different. And so he took that advice, and this was a few months ago. And he's like, dude, I feel like I'm in my 20s again. He's like, I feel amazing. Like, I don't have any brain fog anymore. The energy levels, I'm in the gym again. I'm like, yeah, like, I'm glad. But I mean, the fact that he had a doctor that was at 300, and they're just not up to speed on what's going on and how much testosterone plays a role in men, and estrogen from a women perspective. It's just really kind of frightening that the medical field is kind of stuck in this reactive sense of like, well, if you're not dying, then we don't need to really worry about it. You're good. Like, no, I want to live and be badass and energetic and everything else until I'm like 90 years old or whenever I die. But I want to feel good as I'm doing it. I don't want to feel like total shit, my whole life. Right. What can I do to make myself not feel like shit? That's where I want to be at. And medical field doesn't look at that, at least currently today. At least most PCPs don't. I have to say, my doctor, phenomenal, supportive of everything I do. I teach him now, so like I'm giving him lessons.
he's booking in.
He's now on TRT now because of me. So, it's like
I think the thing about it is, and again, the same conversation I had on Friday, we did talk about the hormone replacement therapy. And I think there's two sort of things that people have a negative reaction to it. Is, number one, there is obviously it feels like cheating, quote unquote, or there's, they have an experience of it being abused and whatever. And that's going to be the same across the board. And also there is the fact that, you
can definitely abuse testosterone, no question about it.
Yeah, for sure.
You can abuse anything.
Yeah. Except even calories.
Yeah.
The other thing is, essentially testosterone is what makes us a man. So having that sort of realization that your testosterone or you as a man is low is something that sort of a mental block to come over. But even, again, the client had asked me a couple of weeks ago, like, he had heard me talk about it, and did I go down the route, and was I doing it, and what was my experience? And I told him, and I just spoke about energy levels, ability to focus, like sleeping better, being able to work better. And when we were on the call, he was like, the cool thing about that was he didn't even mention like, build a muscle or the gym at all. And I was like, but it didn't even cross my mind. Like the things that I feel better about, or the impact that it's had on me. Yes. Okay. Definitely in the gym wise, 100%, but it's not what I feel like, or where I feel I get the most benefits from. And he was like, that sort of motivated him a bit more, because it's not necessarily just about, I want to start taking testosterone because I want big muscles. It's a case of, I want to think better. I want to live longer. I want to have a better quality life, recover better. All the things that come along with it that they definitely don't associate with initially.
Well, I mean, even you know, you look at both men and women from an estrogen / testosterone perspective, you know, it's going to make you feel better as you get older by supplementing hormones and putting them to more of a normal level. Your body just doesn't produce anymore. There's a lot of studies on estrogen for women that if you take it pre-menopause and as you start going through menopause, the effects of menopause are substantially lower, and you have longevity impact of, as in you live longer with estrogen replacement. So, you know, and it helps with a lot of other areas from a woman perspective. So, you know, those are the things that I think people are kind of taboo on because it has been abused before in the past. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you look at testosterone, you know, you know, it was interesting because, you know, and I've been fully transparent on mine. When I first started on testosterone, you know, it's hard to figure out what the numbers are, but you're also introducing a lot of new things, right? You're eating better, you're eating cleaner, you're eating whole foods. You're also lifting, which increases testosterone levels. So, you know, when I first started, the amount of testosterone I needed back then was much more than I need now. I need less now because of how my body produces testosterone. So it was funny because I went to the doctor and got my blood work done, and my levels it just said greater than 1500. I'm like, what? Like, it doesn't even tell me what I'm at. I'm like, oh shit! Like, I need to drop this down.
You know, like, over the scale.
Yeah. I mean, like they only test because the normal ranges are usually, you know, like, you know, between one is, you know, you have no testosterone, and like 1500 is like, hey, you're above the average, you know, level. But I mean, people that, you know, go to like 3000 or more, you know, like they're abusing, you know, that type of stuff. So I was like, oh, I need to drop this down. So I dropped my, you know, stuff down substantially, and more in like the, you know, 900 to 1100 range, which is where I feel pretty good at from that side. So, but everybody's different. Like some people may feel better at 600 or 700, 800. Some people might feel better at 1200, 1300. Just depends on your body, what you think is good. As long as you aren't having, you know, any major impact to, you know, red blood cell counts or, you know, SHBG or, you know, acne can be a problem, blood pressure, depending, you know, some people have those effects. I do not at all. And those are things that you need to monitor as you go through it. But, you know, most folks, if you're just doing normal dosages of testosterone at a normal level, not abusing it, it is fantastic. Like, it is one of the best things that you could do. And there's a lot of studies that show testosterone increases your ability to enjoy resistance training substantially. So your body actually yearns for resistance training when you have higher levels of testosterone, which makes sense. You know, testosterone is, you know, a way for us to be able to put on muscle mass. It is a way for us to survive out in the wild, in the woods and things like that. So we need to be strong. So therefore, you know, it makes sense that our brain is like, hey, we need to get stronger in order for us to be able to accomplish this mission. So it has some really cool things about it. But again, you know, it's not taboo anymore. It's more so understanding your body, the hormones that you need, getting the blood work done to see it. And not everybody needs testosterone. Like if you're in the 600 to 700 range, fantastic. If I was in the anywhere between 300 and, well, I was 200. So I was in the hypogonadism stage. So I was really low. Oh God, I can't even believe how bad I felt then versus now. But if you're in like the, you know, anything below 300, 100% do it. I mean, just do it. You know, if you're in the 400 or 500 range and you're still feeling it, bumping up a little bit is a good idea. But usually most people, you know, and if you're in the 600 to 800 range, that's great. You know, that's a great range to be at.
Yeah, but I think that the most important thing about it is, as with anything else, it's not the sole thing that's going to make you feel better. Do you know what I mean? If you start taking testosterone hormone replacement therapy, but you're eating like a dickhead and you're not training, then you're not going to get the same effect. It's everything that sort of comes in line with it, and you will get more benefit from it if you are doing and taking all the other boxes. It's not magic by any stretch of the imagination, but it can make you feel better alongside everything else that you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, that's this week's podcast, folks. I appreciate you tuning in and listening to us. Hopefully it gave you a good week of motivation to continue on, to train, to push harder, to push yourself harder, to try new things. You know, that's the cool part about all this is we're all learning different experiences and doing different things. But if you like what we're doing, share with us on, you know, share your successes, share your failures, your struggles, you know, in our community on Discord, on Twitter, with the We Hack Health podcast or hashtag, and share us to friends and family. You know, if you think we were doing some good stuff here, that's what we enjoy. We don't get any monetary benefit from this. We just enjoy helping folks in the industry. So with that, pass it over to Ben for any closing words, but really appreciate everybody's support.
I'm just glad that we made a full episode without any.
You didn't crash this time. You didn't crash 32 times this time. But you see the sad Dave face, and then everyone like, oh.
There's so many bits I had to cut out because you were just like, fuck's sake. But yes, everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks to everybody who put up with us in the last episode. Hopefully that's the last time we have any sort of shit shows, and we'll be back to normal service from next week. But yeah, thanks for listening. Catch you next week.
See you next week.